Hey, welcome to this week's special edition of the Thursday Checkdown. It's a Wednesday edition, obviously. I'm your host, Greg Kellogg. Tonight, I'm joined by my co-host, IDP Iggy Gilbert, filling in for Tipp, who is working. Couldn't get out of it. He had some damage. And our very special guest, Dustin Ludke. Now, I want to say Ludke, not Ludke, even
Yes,
though I
Ludke
think
is
he's
right.
a Luddite. I
No,
don't believe.
it's a Ludke. That's the proper way of saying it.
Okay. Dustin is from Madison, Wisconsin. Go Badgers.
That's right.
Um, and he's the content director of Dynasty Pros. Now, I love Dynasty, so we'll talk about that a little bit. And he's the planning strategist at Front Office Pros, a contributor at Fantrax, and more. That's not always limited to, but you can follow him on Twitter at the Done It or
D
the
unit
unit or the D unit 13.
13. Yep.
So we'll try to get that up in the chat a little bit later so that you can get it. Tonight, we're going to discuss how to optimize your podcast. Dustin knows the topic very well. We're also going to discuss, because my live draft is in 3 days,
Mine
the
too.
Scott Fish Bowl, and some players you might believe will be late round gems that we're thinking we'd like to get a little bit later, because that's always a good thing. But this show is brought to you by our friends at Trophy Smack. JC, cue the image, baby. I run a league called Beat a Hall of Famer. And I decided that last year's winner, the FF formula, is going to get a ring. Now, where it says custom text, it says Beat of a Hall of Famer. And where it says custom text on the bottom, it says 2023 champion. It's a beautiful ring, comes in a nice case. I'm just waiting for it to arrive here. It's already been shipped. When it does, I'll mail it off to the FF formula. And, I may add a second Beat a Hall of Famer league, because when we filled an opening, I had a lot of people say they wanted in. So I'm considering that. But these will be live drafts in August after we have a little bit better feel of what's going on. Now, Dustin, I got to admit, I've been around fantasy football for a lot of years. I got no idea what your position at Front Office Pros is.
So
It's new to me. You got to tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, so I met Joe and Steve at Front Office Pros just by random. Almost 2 years ago, I was on the YouTube streets looking for podcasts. Found their podcast, the Front Office Pro podcast. They were doing things called quick trades. I watched it, and I was looking to do guest spots. So I just reached out and said, "Hey, love the podcast. Would love to come on for a guest spot." And they were like, "Oh wow, we've never had a guest. We just started this a couple months ago. We'd love to have you on." Came on, hit it off. They're now two of my best friends in life. I talk to Steve at least once or twice a week. So they are building something. They are podcasting. And so a lot of what I did is Steve was calling me, asking me for advice on how do I connect with more people? How do I grow the YouTube? How do we, just bouncing ideas off me. And then we slowly evolved. And he's like, "Do you just want to become part of the team?" And I said, "Yeah." So what's, kind of what you're thinking. So I became the growth and planning strategist. So basically I do a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight. I talk with Joe and Steve about, hey, what does that look like when we go to the expo? What are we going to do? Or do we need a booth? No. Okay, what are we going to do for Twitter? What's our plan to execute and have more content, more engagement with our fans, more engagement with other people in the industry? How do we make more connections? They'll hit me up and go, "Hey, we're going to do our divisional breakdowns. So we're going to do a division by division." I'll go, "Cool. Let me find some people you're new in NFC North. Let me find a Bengals fan for you. You're doing AFC East. Let me find someone who's maybe a Jets fan." So just connect them with other people. Got to know them. I mean, like I said, I talked to them other. We roomed last year at the Expo together. We're rooming again this year at the Expo. So it's really just help them kind of hone in and have some kind of an outside voice to go, "Okay, you guys have all these thoughts. How do we actually implement what you want to do?" Which I think is missing for a lot of these smaller companies that are trying to grow. And they go, "Man, we want to reach more people." And they go, "How?" And they go, "I don't know." So through that, I've actually started, and it's not really fully announced, but I just started a small boutique consulting company where I do that kind of stuff for small YouTubes and stuff. And charge them a minimal consulting fee, and I consult with them on YouTube growth, social media growth, management stuff, in terms of how do we implement efficiencies to free up more time? How do we grow your YouTube, grow your Twitter so we can engage with more people? My role in life and in the Twitter space is to make people happy, connect people to resources. So whether that resource is which sleeper they want to have for Scott Fishbowl, that's fine. If they want to connect with, hey, how do I grow my YouTube? I'm going to connect with them. If they want to connect with other people, so I have that fantasy Rolodex out there for content creators. They're like, hey, I need someone who's a Seahawks fan. I'm like, cool, look at the Rolodex. Here's 5 people. I need someone who discusses auction leagues. Cool, here's the Rolodex. Here's 6 people, right? And so people use it. I know Aaron St. Dennis was doing his team by teams, and I was on to talk Bills, and he's like, I need people for this. And I was like, did you look at the Rolodex? He's like, yeah, I've been using it a ton to book people because I just know fans of X team. So I'm all about connecting people to resources and helping them have the best fantasy experience they can have, whether that's winning, whether that's trading, whether that's trash talking, whether that's just having fun. Whatever it is that you enjoy in fantasy, that's what I want to do. So that's what I do with Front Office Pros, just kind of help them kind of in a role of, hey, let's talk about your content, build a content calendar, build your YouTube, help you guys connect to more people, and go from there.
Hey, and Iggy, we're getting this for free tonight.
Yeah. There you go.
So Iggy is building something too that's kind of special. Everybody knows Scott Fish. Everybody knows how he does stuff for charity. Iggy has a favorite charity too, Kawasaki disease, and he runs a league or several leagues called the FF7s. Now they're full this year, right?
Yeah, we filled it. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Greg. I got about 3 or 4 people that signed up or got in late after they got the invite. And I'm like, it has to be 16 leagues to work in fantasy football sevens. So if I get a few more, I feel like we could make it happen. But we are currently full.
Okay. And basically, there's no minimum to play, but it's donations. And then you take that money, and what do you do with the money, Iggy?
Yeah, we turn around. We've got hospital-approved flyers to put in rural hospitals all across the Mountain West. That's our goal. We've knocked out every rural hospital in Colorado and medical urgent center. Like if you got an urgent center, we included those as well. And that was 164 last year. This year, we're looking to do the same thing for New Mexico and Wyoming. And we've also donated over $2,000 to Kawasaki's disease foundations as well.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Okay, so Dustin, you're here first and foremost. How does someone go about optimizing their podcast so that they can draw more people?
So I'll say this. There are two kinds of people that have podcasts. There are people who do it just for fun and don't really want it to grow. They just kind of like, hey, I'm going to do what my buddy.
I want it to grow, but it's just for fun.
Yes, and there's people who go, I don't care how many views I get. I don't care. I just do it. Like if no one watches, me and my buddy do it because we enjoy it. There's other people like you who do it for fun, but want to grow it, want to reach more people, to help them win, to help them, hear about good causes. So if you're looking to grow it, there's a couple things you can do. One is when you get on your YouTube, in the first minute, you need to say what you are talking about. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. They read your lips, so make sure your lips are visible. They read your lips. So when you come in, Greg, you did tonight. Hey, we're here. We're going to be talking about optimizing YouTube plus some Scott Fishbowl people that you're looking for. And that should match your title.
I got to interrupt you for a minute. Dustin and I are in a Twitter channel together for FF content creators. And Justin Burley, basically, it might be Bowerly. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly.
But he came up with an idea where you could submit your podcast for review by another content creator. And so I did that. Now, what I haven't been able to do, in-season podcasts is way different from off-season podcasts. We actually have a formula that we do in-season where we predict a sleeper to start or a stud to sit. And we have definitive segments in season, whereas we're more free flow in the off season and just basically have a conversation. One of the comments that came back, I got quite a bit of constructive criticism, which I wanted. And one of the comments was, it was 10 minutes before I knew what you were going to talk about. And so very beginning, that's why I did that, Dustin. So great advice.
I will tell you that comment came from me.
Oh, you did the review. Okay.
So the way it worked last week is Justin gave it to everyone because we got everyone's the review. But yeah, it's one of those things. So YouTube, what they do for their algorithms, they read your lips. and make sure you're talking about what's in the title so it's not clickbait or misleading. So if your title says we're talking Scott Fishbowl sleepers, in the first minute or two, you need to say we're discussing Scott Fishbowl sleepers. It seems redundant because the title says it, your description says it, but for the algorithm, that's how they pick it up. And for the listener, it allows me to go, oh, hey, here's a new podcast here's a new podcast from this company. Oh, cool. I'm listening to it or I'm watching it. Okay, this is what they're talking about. I'm interested or I'm not. What I don't want to do is watch 10, 15 minutes of the show and then go, you're talking about IDP players? I don't play IDP, so I'm not going to, this one doesn't pertain to me.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
I got to tell you, the comments that I got were helpful. Now, some things you can do something about, some things you can't do something
There are,
about.
yes.
But I got to tell you, Iggy, I did not know that the first minute or two that YouTube was actually reading my lips to, AI does a lot of stuff. We got an AI specialist on staff, Ronnie Evans, who's really good with AI. But I didn't know that. I didn't know I don't like to game things. I'm a computer guy, so I know what an algorithm is. But I don't, if I tell you I'm going to talk about something, we're going to talk about it. But by the same token, what I tell everybody is everybody in this show is an expert. All of us are experts because we've been doing this for years. But experts in fantasy football aren't the same as experts in other fields. An expert in fantasy football is still going to be wrong 40% of the time.
Yeah.
Because making predictions is a tricky business. It really is.
A very tricky business. And I'll tell you what I do. I watch 2 or 3 football podcasts a week, but I spend the rest of my time watching YouTube podcasts on like how to optimize YouTube or your podcast or other like growth podcasts. So I listen to Colin and Samir, who you guys probably don't know. They are an interview podcast. They interview people in the YouTube space. So they'll interview Mr. Beast. They'll interview Ryan Trahan. They interviewed the head of Instagram, and it's like an hour or 2 long podcast, but they just ask questions of, hey, how does the Instagram algorithm work? How does it work for this? How does it work for that? How does it? And I've gleaned so much. I have a wall in my office, and I just have little postcards of all these like nifty sayings that I catch from them. They've said on there, basically setbacks and failure is not an obstacle on the road to success. It is the road to success. Like you're going to have failure. You're going to have setbacks. So it's like, that's a mindset I can get into, which helps me think about doing things differently. So when I make a post that I think is really good, or I write an article that I think is super amazing and no one reads it, okay, that's not, I didn't fail. It's just, that's the road to success, is those trial and errors. So when you're doing a podcast, you want to get out there in the first minute what you're talking about, make sure that matches your title. You also want to make sure that you are engaging not only your co-host, but the audience. So what you guys do really good is, drop a comment or, hey, we saw this comment and we answer questions. That's huge because you're not always going to get live comments, but you're going to get comments throughout the day. And you want to be able to make sure that you're engaging with people live during the show like this. Like, we're going to talk. Hey, that's great. Listen to your audience because your audience is going to tell you what they want to hear. So maybe you only spend 20 minutes on tight end sleepers, but you get the most comments for that. Maybe that's something you want to spend more time on. So listening to your audience, going back when you get comments after the fact is super important. Thumbnails are huge for YouTube, to be honest with you. A lot of the main YouTubers, not in the fantasy space, but big YouTubers like Mr. Beast and those type of guys will tell you need to spend probably double the amount of time on your thumbnail than you do on your video. And so building a good thumbnail, and there's tons of YouTubes on that, on how you build a YouTube, thumbnail. I can send you a little PDF that one person put out. It's all about creating basically a knowledge gap, and how do you create that so it's interesting. So when someone's scrolling, they see it and go, oh, this is interesting. And then it goes to basic psychology, colors, like contrasting colors and creating motion without actually having motion. Stuff like that is super important. There's all these little tips and tricks that singly won't make your podcast great. But when you start stacking those things on top of each other, then you start seeing real growth. Call to actions at the end of your video. So if you talk about, hey, we're going to talk about Scott Fishbowl sleepers. So at the end of the video going, hey, who do you think is a Scott? Hey, your listener, if you think Scott Fishbowl sleeper, drop it in the comments. So a call to action so people can go on and then interact with your post, and then you can then interact with them. It's all about creating connections with your audience, connections with people. So those are some of the basic things you can do to really grow your podcast. I'll say this. The biggest issue I have with most podcasts is they're just kind of dull, to be honest with you. There's a lot of them out there that it's the two people have the same tone of voice and it's just monotone. So I don't want to say exaggerate your personality, but be yourself, but just maybe turn it up a few notches. So if you are...
But exaggerate your personality.
Yes, to an extent. You don't want to be a character. You don't want to be a character. You want to be a little slightly heightened version of yourself.
I want to be a caricature. Iggy?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Dustin, what do you think are some of the most common mistakes that you see from not just like new people, but, you know, people in general? Like you mentioned the monotone, you know, not having a beefed up thumbnail. Is there anything else that's just like really common that could help somebody that's, you know, like I said, not necessarily just starting, but also people that have been in it a couple of years?
Yeah. So the monotoneness is thing. And so here's the thing. If let's say me and Greg and you guys are doing a podcast weekly, if I disagree with you, I need to disagree with you. I can't just be like, Greg, I don't really like that point. It's like, no, Greg, you're wrong. And here's why. Like, throw a little contrast in there. Another thing people do is not have good audio and video quality. Invest a little bit into your camera. I got my mic, my lights, and my camera for, I think it was like basically $100 each. So it's not like a ton of money. And you don't have to buy it all at once. You buy a camera, and then maybe you buy lights, and then maybe you buy a microphone, and then you upgrade your camera a couple years later. And then level of volume across the board. So I was listening to a podcast the other day where one person was really loud, one person was normal, but one person was really soft. So when that person, I'm like, wait, hold on, what did they say? And so I'm like trying to adjust and hear this one person. And then the guy who was normal seemed lost because the other guy was super loud. So balancing your mics, that's why you guys have a producer to hopefully balance some of those things out on the back end. Get on your podcast a little early, make sure everybody sounds equal to each other. So it's not super light. I mean, simple things of moving the mic closer makes it louder, moving it farther away makes it less. So finding that good spot for you, but make sure everyone on the podcast is equal. So the listener's also not hearing someone and they either have to tune out or they have to adjust their volume, and then someone else and it's like kills their eardrums. That's a big, big thing. And then just make sure we're giving someone actionable advice at the end of each segment. Keep segments short, but if you're saying this is why you do this, this, and this is the actionable advice. Go get this guy for a 3rd round pick. You pick up this guy in the 7th round. Pick up this guy in the 8th round. You know, trade this guy for a 2nd round pick. Don't just go, go trade for Dalton Kincaid. What should I trade for Dalton Kincaid? Give them actionable, real advice that they can take in and go, okay, this is what I should get. If you say go get Dalton Kincaid and someone goes, well, I traded 2 firsts for him. Well, that's a bad move. But you want to get them trade for Dalton Kincaid.
Wait a minute. We're going to talk about Scott Fishbowl.
Yes.
And you know, tight end premium plus in the Scott Fishbowl. Yes. He might be worth 2 first-round picks.
If you could trade Scott Fishbowl, he might. But I think in your managed league, he's probably not worth it. So I think it's every league's going to be different. But go, these are the settings we operate in, and this is what you should offer for them. So if you are dealing with auction budgets, how much they spend? Maybe it's not just how much. Maybe it's a percentage. If you're talking waivers and they're talking fab budgets, don't say, hey, spend $15 on this person. You may be talking $100 budget, but I might have a $200 budget. Say, hey, you should spend 10% of your budget on this person. So it's just those little tweaks like that are missed by a lot of people. There's other things like when you're talking a player, make sure you continually say their name through each segment. So people, if they tune out or whatever, they can catch on. If you use industry terms like ADP, say average draft position. Don't use the acronym. You know, if you're saying, you know, IDP, it's individual offensive players. You can say it once or twice and you can go back and forth, but you got to make sure you re-drop that in. So someone goes, and they kept saying IDP, and I don't know what that means. So people know it's dropping those terms. You want to assume that the people who are listening are the smartest people in the world, but also the dumbest people in the world. And they don't know anything.
I've been doing this for a very long time. I watch, because I'm retired,
Yep.
I watch a ton of fantasy football podcasts. I also watch a lot of the Philippines podcasts because I'm going to the Philippines in March for 3 to 6 months. It was supposed to be 6, but I'm thinking we're going to only keep it to 3 so I can get back in time for next year's Scott Fishbowl and next year's Expo, because I love that. But I got to tell you, I got no idea what ECR is.
Yeah.
They never explain it on Fantasy Pros. They do a great podcast, but they use terms that I've never heard of. That's excellent advice.
Yeah, I work at a university where everything is an acronym, and people go, do you have access to this? I go, yeah. They go, do you know what that is? I go, no, it's just the acronym. I have no clue what the acronym stands for. And it just sets you back. And at some point, people go, I've heard it so long that I feel dumb asking. So ECR is expert consensus rankings, right? And Fantasy Pros does those, but they don't ever say expert consensus rankings. They go,
They always say ECR.
and they assume you know. I just assume people don't know. That's for me is always the best thing. Assume they don't know.
Iggy?
No, yeah, I thought those were very valid points. I kind of switched some gears on you a little bit.
Yeah.
Like how many leagues are you playing in per year? And like how do you manage that on top of being a content creator?
So I limit my leagues. I'm only technically I do Scott Fish Bowl, Warrior Bowl, Baby Bowl, Super League, those 4 charity tournaments, and then I have 2 Dynasty leagues and 1 family league. So I really limit. I used to be in that's 7. I used to be in 7 managed leagues. I don't really consider the tournament leagues because I'm not trying to win them. I'm more in it for the community and the charity part of it. So I'm really in 2 Dynasty leagues. I'm still in my family league because it's family, but it's redraft. It's not even fractional points. It's like the oldest league in the world. It's been around for 20 some years, but it's family, so you stay in it. So really, I consider that I'm in 2 leagues. I have 2 Dynasty leagues that I really care about. I manage. I have spreadsheets for. I spend a lot of time trying to find trades. Scott Fish Bowl is great for the community aspect. Baby Bowl, Warrior Bowl is great for the charity aspect. I really love Baby Bowl because I love the strategy of that. So that does take a little extra time on the front ends. But then that's really just 2 leagues and a bunch of charity leagues.
Yeah. Go ahead, Iggy.
I was just going to say, if you're not familiar with the Warrior Bowl, Greg and Shane, both 2 great guys. I've been a part of that charity tournament since the very beginning, actually. So I'm really thankful. And if they still got some openings, try to get into it. It's a wonderful tournament.
Yeah, and Justin Burley has we talked about him earlier. He has a charity tournament called the Super League, and he's looking for like 6 other people to fill another league right now. So if you're interested, you can drop me a Twitter DM or Justin Burley on Twitter. I forget what his Twitter is, but he's looking for more people. I love Baby Bowl. So if you haven't done Baby Bowl, it's a different kind of league where you can start quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex every week. But once you use them for the season, they're done. So you can only use them once per season. So I love that strategy of when do I use Mahomes and Kelsey as that stack, and then you like get to the last week, you're like, I have no one left. And so he does it. Rob Norton does it. He'll be coming out soon. He does it after Scott Fish Bowl drafts, but he does it for the playoffs. I think it's like $20 to get in. Half goes to charity, half goes to the winner's prize pool, which is kind of fun. And then he does it for the playoffs as well. So that's another just fun charity league, but adds a little bit something different to it.
Have you seen Surf Football? Mike from Surf Football?
I watched your guys' episode on Surf Football, and I checked it out a little bit. I haven't got too much into it, but yeah, he's got some fun stuff too. I think innovation in leagues is super fun. Now, I don't play IDP because there's too many guys, and I don't play, like an all-22 league, or I don't do a salary cap league because it's just too much to manage because I'm in the weeds. I'm in the weeds deep in Dynasty. There's very rarely that there's a player that comes across that I don't know who they are. Like I'm, this is the wide receiver 8 on this team, or he's a practice squad wide receiver. Like I'm in it. So, but if you want to innovate, there's plenty of innovations out there, especially in those leagues that Surf Football's doing stuff in the DFS space and kind of those daily games. There's a lot of fun stuff out there. Which is
do you do Devi at all?
Again, I don't. There's just too many guys, and because I'm one of those people that will go all in, I just can't. I can't spend all in researching college players for like a week. My wife would kill me.
Iggy?
Yeah, being big into Dynasty, I know you said 20 something years with your family league, correct, Dustin? Has that been Dynasty the whole time, or did that start off
that's
as
all redraft, and it's just it's so basic and bad. I'm trying to get them to go to fractional scoring. We have like 6 ties every year, and it's the worst thing ever. But they're just stuck. It's stuck in those lands where like back when fractional points was new, and we like only get 3 ad drops a week, and we only get 25 ad drops for the year. So it just became one of those things where like I had more time because I was a college student at one point. And they're like, you have all this time to research, and we don't. We work. I'm like, so they made this rule, and now everybody has all the free time because it's all in our hands in a cell phone, but they haven't changed the rule. So I'm one of those guys who likes to churn kickers and turn my bench over a ton. For bye weeks, and I can't do it in that league because there's so many restrictions. But
we did say that we're going to talk about the Scott Fish Bowl.
Yes.
So let's move over to that segment a little bit. I'm drafting live in Houston Saturday. And then next week, I'm driving to Dallas because one of my best friends in the industry, Mr. Bob Harris, is drafting live in Dallas. And it's like a 3-hour drive for me.
Not too bad.
My wife and I are going to drive up and see it. And we're actually going up a day early so we can actually tour Dallas, do some
Nice.
things around town, and then we'll come back. But where are you drafting? Are you drafting slow or are you drafting live?
I'm drafting live on Sunday in the Madison live draft. I have the 101 in the Thornton Mellon division. So it'll be a fun draft. I went to Chicago live last year just to check it out and hang out, which was, I said this to someone, like, that was the best experience I've had in this industry in terms of like making connections. I got to meet Jim Coventry and talk to him, and we've had a great relationship since. Met Nick Script, who I'm now working for Fantrax. So like just building that relationship there. John McGlynn and JT and Steven Rhoda were all there. So it was just a great time to meet people. So I'm drafting Sunday in the Scott Fishbowl live draft from the 101 spot. It's going to be Josh Allen. I've been telling everybody that from the get-go. That's why I took the spot. So, but I'm looking forward to just hanging out. It's 5 minutes from my house. Hoob's coming in, and there's, a bunch of guys that in the area that are could come in and draft. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay. And Josh Allen, but what are you expecting to get in the second and third round? Because you got that big reversal in the third round.
Yeah, so I've been mocking a lot, and it seems like I might be able to get Dalton Kincaid. Now, I am historically been lower on Kincaid than most people. If I want that stack, that's available for me. I've been getting Jahmyr Gibbs a lot in mock drafts in the second round, and I'm all about it. My thought process with that third round reversal, having 101, 212, 312, is if the first two rounds, I get guys who have legit shots at being the number one at their position. So I think Josh Allen is one of 3 or 4 people that can be the QB1. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is one of 3 or 4 people that can be running back 1. And now if Laporta was there, I'd take him because I think he has a shot. Trey McBride has a shot at being tight end 1. Obviously, if CeeDee Lamb or one of those guys that think I can be wide receiver 1 is going to be there, I don't think they're going to make it. So that's why I think if I can get a Breece Hall, a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Bijan Robinson at 212, I'm super happy.
Iggy, what are you doing for the Scott Fishbowl?
Yeah, I'm in the Gandalf division. So I'm doing a slow draft on MFL. It's not on Sleeper. So, we'll be over there. It took us a while to get it filled. It's the best movie of all time. So I figured it'd fill up quick. But I guess others have varying opinions on that. So I'm looking forward to that. We start Monday. I filled out my July calendar, and it's like, Fantasy Football 7 starts Sunday, Battle of the Sexes, Scott Fish Bowl, then the FFC Bowl and the Warrior Bowl. So it's just like a nonstop just rollover. But I'm very much looking to Scott Fish. In my third year, my first year I went pretty deep. I went to the semi, or I was 0.46 away from going to the semis. And so the heartburn. The second year, I just had Nick Chubb across every league last year. I was way too in on one player. So that pretty much was it for me. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. My strategy, I just, like you said, Dustin, I kind of look at the board and see where it goes. I took the 12 thinking that the third round reversal would help me, but it doesn't. I don't think it does. I'm a little confused by it because I took like 2 last year. I took 4 last year, and I felt like slighted by the third round reversal. Now I chose 12, and I still feel slighted. So I don't know what's going on there.
It's definitely, if you want, like, because you're not getting a top end guy, you're getting that second tier of player at the first round. So it does help. Part of Scott Fishbowl, if you're seriously trying to win Scott Fishbowl, something you have to do is you have to deviate from what everybody else is doing at your position. And that happens in the second and third rounds. The 105 in most divisions is going to be a CeeDee Lamb or a Bijan. Like, there's going to be a very narrow number of guys that's going to be there. So I was talking to someone earlier, like, is it crazy to take Lamar Jackson at 101 just because it's different? I was like, well, yeah, but you're still got to be different than everyone else that took Lamar at 105 or 106 or 104. So the second and third round really does deviate. That's what's tough about being early, like 1, 2, or 3, is that you just have to wait so long in the third round. But again, I did it before scoring. So that's the penalty we pay for doing a live draft is we pick our spots before scoring comes out because we want to do a live draft. And that's the trade-off of the community and the live draft versus not knowing scoring when you stick your spot and you're kind of stuck with it. Again, I wanted Josh Allen, so I was going to guarantee I got Josh Allen. And that's what I wanted, and that's all I cared about. And then I'll go from there. Because for me, it's about the community. It's about the charity. It's about having fun.
No, and, real quick, I grew up in Dallas-Fort Worth, so where, Greg's going to go. And I'm a Packers fan, right? So, that just happened for Sterling Sharp. And I want to find out how you became a Bills fan. I don't know if you grew up in Madison, but you're there right now. What's the connection to the Bills? But first, I believe we have a commercial from one of our sponsors at Drafters.
Here we go.
So that was actually the league that I drafted in last night with Bob Lung and Disco for $500,000 for first prize. So we're glad to have them on as sponsors.
Absolutely. Thank you, drafters. Use code TSA Bets if you want to get a match on your deposit. You just get up to $100. There's $2 mini best ball drafts, another way to kind of get acclimated to ADP, I think. But yeah, Dustin, what's the story on you being a Bills fan? How did that go about?
So I'm originally from outside Philadelphia, New Jersey area, but my mom is from outside Buffalo, Lockport, New York. So she was she's a Bills fan, but her family is super big Bills fan. My aunt and uncle had season tickets. She knew some of the cheerleaders. So I'm 40, almost 42. So I grew up when the Bills were hitting 4 Super Bowls in a row. So obviously Jim Kelly, Bruce Smith, Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas, that was my childhood. And so I grew up. This is actually my starter jacket from when I was a teenager. This it's got my name sewn in there. Like it's legit. Like it's orange and more. I wore it almost every day. So obviously just grew up a Bills fan. Grew up in Eagles country as a Bills fan. Obviously, we had the heartbreak of 4 losses, and then we went through a drought of just being horrible for the longest time. So I've got some jerseys on the wall. I pick up a few things. So I actually won this Antonio Gates jersey from Front Yard Fantasy, and I was like, well, I can't just have an Antonio Gates, so I bought an Andre Reed. Hopefully to get a few more autographed jerseys at some point. But now I'm in Packers country, so I'm in Madison. So obviously got the Badgers, and I'm a Michigan fan, so I'm a Wolverine fan. So
thank you. I can't say that. See, I told you.
So it's fun being in Wisconsin, being in Madison, where you have the Badgers and college football rules. I've been to a couple games. I actually went to the pro day this past year and watched those guys work out, which is kind of cool. So you get to use some of that kind of stuff. But it's fun. I've only been to one Packers game in my life. Actually, Hoove called me up last season on a Wednesday, or actually messaged me on Twitter and was like, "Hey, are you going to the game tomorrow?" And I was like, "Nope." He's like, "Do you want to?" And I was like, "Sure." He's like, "All right, cool. Meet me here." And it's like only the second time I've met him in person. So I say to my wife, I go, "Can I go to the Packers game?" She's like, "Yeah, with who?" And I was like, "Hoove." She's like, "Who?" And I was like, "Hoove." And she's like, "Hoove who?" And I was like,
By the way,
his name's Hoove.
HOOV.
Yes.
On Twitter. And he's on Twitter a lot.
Yeah, Hoove Tube. Yeah, and I was like, his name is Hoove. I don't know his real name. So I meet him at like a grocery store. I get in his car and I was like, "Hey man, thanks for inviting me." I was like, "I have one question. What is your real name?" And he's like, "Oh, it's Jacob Hoover." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I'm texting my wife. I was like, "His name's Jacob."
That's awesome. Go ahead.
Hoove called me the other day and she's like, "Who are you on the phone with?" I was like, "Hoove." And she's like, "Who?" And I was like, "Hoove. Hoove Tube Hoove."
Hey, how is Braylon Allen going to do in the pros?
He's just stuck behind Breece Hall right now. And he's probably going to be stuck there forever. So I think not running
4 years.
Yeah. Not running the 40 at the combine or at his pro day really hurt. He did not look good at the pro day. I think he was under the weather. He looked really kind of gassed. He's a young kid, though. He's only like 19 years old. So he's got plenty of time. It's just going to be where he lines up after this year.
Okay. So I wanted to ask both of you, what is your favorite change in the Scott Fish Bowl rules this year? I'll tell you, for me, it's the single player to position with 5 or 6 flexes so that you can build your lineup any way you want. What about you guys? Start with you, Iggy.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. It's the return yards. Fantasy Football Sevens is based off a system I created with my college friends, Dustin. And, first year my friend invited me. I was like, yeah, whatever. Second year, I was like, oh, I love this, but I can do this much better than you can. And I created IDPs and I created return yards. I was like, we got to get these return yards. I love watching. You're still talking Devin Hester era. Well, maybe he's going out a little bit. On the end of that decade, Hall of Famer, going to be a Hall of Famer this year, by the way. So for me, this adds so much value to, you only get offensive players in the Scott Fish Bowl, which is perfectly fine. On the IDP, you can make a cornerback really valuable, but you can still make wide receivers really valuable as well. The second-year player out of the Jets, why am I blanking on his name, was on Hard Knocks.
Xavier Gibson.
Yeah, Xavier Gibson.
Yeah, Gibson. There's all kinds of people. Patterson. Justin Fields, if they're truthfully thinking about putting
They're not going to have
They're never going to do it.
They do. That's such a hack, though, I just think there's potential to make players, particularly on these bye weeks, what is it this week? 14 and 6 or 14. And, there's some major bye weeks in there, and you can get some of these players in your waivers and just plug them, and you got somebody that can get you at least 11, 12 points in a PPR league, that is because I'm like you, Dustin. I like moving on the waiver. Fantasy football sevens, you got 15 starters, 5 bench players. So if you're not going to move on the waiver, you're not going to win.
You're stuck.
And I just think that's the fun of fantasy football. So that's my answer, Greg.
Dustin?
I'll say I really like that quarterbacks are nerfed. I like that it's 1 point for every 50 yards passing because although Scott Fishbowl is a super flex, the problem with super flex is everyone starts a second quarterback in their super flex, and that is generally not the most optimal play. In most leagues, it should be half the teams. The problem is you do it because of the upside. What we're realizing is that most of these bottom end quarterbacks are scoring just as much, if not less, than your flex players. So I think this forces people to really evaluate how soon they draft that second quarterback in Scott Fishbowl. For me, it probably won't be till round 8 or later in Scott Fishbowl, unless there's some crazy value, because you can get guys like that lower, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, we'll talk about probably a little bit later. You can get them super late. You don't need to start them. You don't need to start them. You are probably actually better off starting a wide receiver running back. So I think it's shifting people's way of like, oh, if it's super flex, you have to take 2 quarterbacks within the first 3 rounds. I don't think you have to do that with the way the scoring setting stuff. So I like it because it's that much different. It makes people think differently about how they value assets.
Iggy?
I already said the kicker, like the kick and return yards.
No, you have a question.
Oh, yeah. Who I've heard you say you're looking at Josh Allen, like you're all in on him at the live event there in Madison. Who else are you just like, we're going to talk about some targets deep, but is there anybody that you are specifically looking at, in that second, third, fourth, fifth round that you expect to come your way and you're going to maybe jump up to get?
Yeah, if I can get Jahmyr Gibbs in the second, that's definitely new. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I love his just, excitement. I want guys that I'm going to be excited watching. So I'm probably not going to have any Dolphins because I hate the Dolphins as a Bills fan. Because I just don't want to root for them. Like, I don't want to root for Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle or Tua. I just don't. I can't say there's anybody I'm really interested in. There's a couple guys late that I'm like, I really love. So I love Dylan Lobby. I interviewed him after the Senior Bowl, before the Combine. Just fell in love with him as like a person. Like, he's just such a nice guy. We talked a lot at the Combine. So like, I want to get him because I like him. So I kind of let my fandom go. I'm a big Keon Coleman believer, so I'll probably scoop him up later to complete that stack. But there's not a ton of guys.
Do you think Curtis Samuel will be the number 1 receiver?
No. I said this last night. Curtis Samuel is hot trash. No one should ever have him. When you go for a walk in the park, you see this like grocery store plastic bag that's like tangled up in a bush and it's like dirty on the outside, but it's like moist and hot on the inside. That's Curtis Samuel. He's a bag. You can put targets in. You can feel good touching it or having it. You'd rather have a nice backpack. And that's Shaquille Shakir. That's Keon Coleman. Curtis Samuel's hot trash. Don't pick him up. Don't waste a pick. I think he's not that good. Yeah, everybody goes, oh, with Joe Brady. Yeah, 4 years ago he was good with Joe Brady. What do you freaking do? Like, if we're banking on 4 years, then we should be buying Allen Robinson. Like, if you're banking on 4 years ago production, you should be buying Allen Robinson this year then. But you're not. It's not.
All right, so we were going to talk about some late round gems.
Yep.
Not everybody's in the Scott Fishbowl, so we're going to talk about those 4 Scott Fishbowl because their rules are kind of unique, and those that you can use in any league. So, but first, let me start by defining a late round gem. I realize that round 10 isn't really late, but it is after all your starters. So basically anybody with an ADP, an average draft position, got that from you there.
There you go.
Average draft position of 120 or higher, which means they're an 11th round pick or later. We're going to consider a late round gem. Now, for me, I use the Fantasy Pros PPR ADP. They also have half PPR and standard, but I don't know anybody that plays a standard league that isn't 20 years old.
Yeah.
Modern leagues give yardage bonuses. They just do. So for me, again, it depends entirely on your scoring system when you're talking about gems. So I wanted to do standard PPR scoring first, and I went with 1 at each position. I didn't tell these guys they had to do that, but I did share my picks with them. At pick number 136, quarterback Justin Herbert is going really late. Now, this is a kid that his first year he had over 30 touchdowns. Okay? the kid can play. Now, last year, he had a good year last year, but everybody's down on him because Jim Harbaugh is there. I think that's a huge mistake because Harbaugh plays to win. He uses the tools he has. Right now, he's got an older running back in Gus Edwards. He's got J.K. Dobbins, who is nothing. I'm kind of high on the running back, but Kamani Vidal. But I think Vidal may start the season on kickoff returns, actually.
Yep.
So he'll be mentioned later in my Scott Fishbowl late round gyms. For running back here, I went with Austin Eckler, ADP 126. And the only reason I was of the opinion going into this year that Austin Eckler was washed. He was done. But then I started reading how he was banged up last year, how they went away from the run early, and so he wasn't getting a lot of usage there. And then I saw a picture of him, actually a film of him. This dude is buff. He looks like a linebacker. He is buff, and they say he's been working out really hard. Now, the fear I have for Eckler is that I think Brian Robinson Jr. is a good back.
Yes, he is.
So how much? But with today's game, David Montgomery's a good back, and you're high on Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah.
Montgomery scored 13 touchdowns last year running the ball. So at wide receiver in regular leagues, somebody is going to pop for New England. Okay, I don't know if it'll be Brissett, I can't even think of his name.
Jacoby Brissett.
Brissett, or if it will be the rookie Drake, and I think Drake May is probably talent-wise the best quarterback in this rookie class. And Iggy can testify. I love JJ. I think JJ is going to be the highest scoring rookie quarterback this year.
JJ McCarthy from Michigan.
Oh, yeah. But I'm going with Demario Pop Douglas as my breakout wide receiver. He's going at pick 158 currently. And I just think you got a couple of rookies that have promise, but I think if Drake May gets the start, he'll focus mainly on Pop Douglas because Pop knows how to get open.
Yep.
At tight end, I went with Mike Gesicki. I read something where Gesicki had the largest ADOT, the average depth of target. They were throwing to him down the field further than any other tight end in the league last year. And he's playing with Burrow, and he's got two excellent receivers to take it off. So that's my standard PPR scoring. I'll come back with Scott Fish later, but let's go to you first, Dustin. Who are your guys for just a regular league?
Yeah, I went with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, ADP 160, average draft position of 167, being drafted as the quarterback 22. What changed for Baker Mayfield this offseason? All they did was add Bucky Irving, who's a good pass-catching wide receiver, running back. I look at it this way. My quarterback should get me the average. It's basically two.
Mike Evans got older.
Yeah, Mike Evans got older, but he's still Mike Evans. He's still good. Chris Godwin's still
1,000 yards every year.
Kate Otton's just getting better. Rashad White's getting better. Baker Mayfield had 28 touchdowns last year. Like, he was top 5 in touchdowns, and his team just got a little bit better. He didn't lose pieces. He's not, like, all of a sudden just washed. He ran the ball 62 times. Like, that's still a decent number of carries. Now, didn't do great, only 2.63 yards per rush. But that's not his game, but he can still do it. I just don't see how he's being drafted as quarterback 22. He finished as quarterback 10. So even if he drops back to quarterback 15, you're still getting a ton of value there. At running back, I couldn't decide if I like Rico Dowdle or Zeke Elliott, but one of those Dallas running backs at ADP 141 for Dowdle, 129 for Zeke, one of those guys is the starter for a team that wants to run the ball. Tony Pollard.
You watch Deuce Vaughn.
Tony Pollard had 252 carries last year. Like, who's taking those? Dowdle had 89, so there's 341 carries from that backfield last year that's going to be split between them. Even if it's split equally, you're telling me you're going to get 160, 170 carries? That's really good volume. Tight end, I went with Zach Ertz for the Commanders. I'm not buying the Ben Sinnott hype. Like, I don't think he takes over. Zach Ertz is still really good. It just injuries have hampered him. That's the only risk. He's going at ADP 251 as the tight end 37. So you're telling me that there's more, like, they're basically saying he's the 4th or 5th best backup tight end. That's crazy to me. And then a sneaky wide receiver at average draft position 202, being drafted as the wide receiver 86, is Zay Jones, who signed with the Arizona Cardinals. You can't believe that Kyler Murray is going to go back to being a top 5 quarterback and just think it's Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. Zay Jones finished as wide receiver 84 last year and only played 9 games. So if he plays a full slate of games, he's going to be way over 86. He's going to be the second guy on that team. Now we saw.
He may be the first.
Yeah.
This hype for Marvin Harrison Jr., let's remember, he's a rookie.
Yeah.
It's going to take him a while.
Hollywood, 94 targets are vacated. Rondale Moore, 61. So 155 vacated targets for that offense. Trey McBride had 100 and some targets. I don't see him getting a ton more targets. So those targets have to go somewhere between Marvin Harrison and Zay Jones. So I'm buying him all day at wide receiver 86.
Iggy?
Yeah, we have some of the same guys, Dustin, like you talked about. It's for me, Baker Mayfield's my quarterback as well. Yeah. I can't get away from him in best ball drafts, which I'm already done about 25 of. I just think he's a steal. That's what I have in my notes. 2 wide receivers that are wide receiver ones, in my opinion. Like, Godwin and Evans are fantastic. Yeah, they're making a big deal about the coordinator going to the Panthers. I don't think that's as big a deal because they promoted from within. At the end of the day, I'm a big believer in, I think coaching is very undervalued. It's very important. But, like, once you have the system in place and now we're just expanding on that system, I think it comes way more about the pros and the Joes and the X's and the O's. And you didn't mention, I think it's a great pass-catching running back as well. Rashid White he had 64 receptions last year. That was the 4th most amongst running backs. And I think their defense may take a step backwards. This is a plus from playing IDP. Say what you want about Devin White, but he had games when he could excel. Yep. Shaquille Barrett getting older. Levante David, the ageless wonder at linebacker.
Yeah, they're aging up.
Yeah, dude. There's the secondary might hold them together, maybe. But I think this leads to more drives and more points put on the offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I just think it's a good one. 167 at running back. I got Jaleel McLaughlin. I'm in Colorado. I get a lot more of the local news, and he's getting a lot of the 1 reps actually already. I'm not sure Peyton is completely sold on Javonte Williams. He had a major injury. You blow out MCL, ACL. That's not people. We just expect this great comeback as we see him.
First of all, I want to call out Evan in the chat. Evan, thank you so much for the Herbert love. I agree with you.
Yep.
But second, have you heard anything about Audic Estime? Because I was thinking Estime might take. I know he ran a terrible 40. I understand that, but that 40 didn't stop him from being very successful at Notre Dame. Do you hear anything out of camp from Estime at all?
Not yet, but I expect him to definitely be in on some goal line work, especially if they go McLaughlin as their lead running back. He's just going to be a lot bigger down there. They still have some Ajay P. Ryan as well. So loaded backfield, but you could see it at the end of last year. McLaughlin was getting a lot of carries, getting more rotation time. I think Sean Payton is the head coach, and he's kind of like more of an authoritarian, and I think he likes McLaughlin, and I think that's where we're going to go. That's at 153, I think, is a steal of a running back. Wide receiver, Darnell Mooney. He's a clear wide receiver, too, for Atlanta.
Kirk Cousins, good quarterback.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins has shown that he can support 2 wide receivers. If you don't believe me, go look at JJ. Go look at Addison last year, even before the injury. And that's with Hawkinson in the mix, who also finished the tight end 6. So I think that's I think there's a lot of potential for Mooney. You can get basically for free, a wide receiver 5 or 6 right there. And I don't think they have a great defense as well. I think there's some great players on that defense, but new coach, new resume. I feel like the defense could suffer there. I think there's potential for more offensive points. And then tight end, I just went stack. It's one of my favorite stacks. I'm doing in best ball. Cade Otton, great double down option to pair with Baker. Fantastic tight end boost. That was saving that for Scott Fish. But he had 47 receptions and 4 touchdowns last year. I'm projecting those numbers to both go up. He's developed a relationship with Baker Mayfield. I mean, he's still on his rookie contracts. Sometimes it takes tight ends 2 or 3 years to develop into a great NFL tight end. So I think that's there. I got star Taysom Hill, 203. We'll talk about him here in a second. And then a deep dive if you want. This is a real deep dive. I like McCole Hardman at 308. I mean, you can walk away with any draft with him as your last pick, okay? And
where's he playing now? He used to be in Kansas City, but
he's back in Kansas City. He got re-signed by Kansas City. And, when you're talking about the guy at the end of your draft, you got to rely on the others to kind of help him get there. If not, you're going to be relying on Kadarius Toney, who can't stay healthy. Hollywood Brown, who has shown that he gets injured as well. You got Rashid Rice, who could miss time. He's a great wide receiver, but he could miss time.
Well,
And
he's going to miss some time. The question is how much.
Well, and if it's this year or not.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll be this year.
And Xavier Worthy, who's a rookie, who a lot of people are high on, but go back and look at the track record for Andy Reid and rookie wide receivers. I mean, Tyreek Hill didn't have a great year. I think like the leading
rookie. Rice had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah,
he might be the best to ever have a year. I think before that, it's like Pinkerton or somebody in the Eagles with Donovan McNabb. I mean, they drafted a lot, but Andy Reid's offense is actually quite complicated for a college wide receiver to come in and pick because there's so many things on cue. I mean, you saw it with Patrick Mahomes and McCole Hardman. The last seconds, they were executed. They knew what to play. They called that hot read, and he threw it to Hardman with basically nobody on him. Andy Reid has that sophistication coming from that Mike Holmgren, coming from that Bill Walsh offense. But I think if you need if you got a deep bench, go look at McCole Hardman and just hold him and hold on to him. Maybe he'll get some more looks.
Okay, well, slide over and do your Scott Fishbowl. We got about 7 minutes left, so we'll go through these a little quicker. Do you have any special late round gems for Scott Fish?
Yeah, Daniel Bellinger, tight end for the New York Giants. What's he going at? Somewhere around 280 something. I had it. Will Disley, who's going to emerge there in the Chargers? I think Disley could be the best pass catching option they have over there as well. And then who else did I have? Here's a guy you might like, Dustin. I like Marquise Valdez-Scantling. He may go down playing with like two of the best quarterbacks of this century. Yeah. He went from Aaron Rodgers to Patrick Mahomes, and now he's going to Josh Allen. All three of those guys got a bomb. I don't know what's going to change other than the wide receiver room is kind of, not the best in Buffalo, and there's nobody that kind of has MVS's skill set. I think he's going to be blowing the top off this defense so that they can throw to Kincaid and Shakir underneath. I think that's how this is going to set up. But if you need a stab at MVS, try to get somebody that may not have a high PPR value, but on one of those bye weeks, you can get him and maybe he catches 2 bombs or a bomb and a touchdown.
Yeah, it's a good matchup. I mean, he could have that Gabe Davis role of also to go off for 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns in a game. I agree.
Exactly. That's what they brought him in for, to fill that void, because they're going to need somebody to stretch this defense so they can throw those underneath routes to Kincaid and Shakir.
Yeah.
But those are kind of my deep bombs that I have. I also like Taysom Hill, but I'll let you talk about him, Greg.
All right. Dustin, who do you have for Scott Fishbowl?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at late rounds. I'm looking at Russell Wilson, super late, ADP of like 200. Jerome Ford, I don't think Nick Chubb's coming back right away. I think he showed really well. And even week 1, last year when Nick Chubb was healthy, Jerome Ford had 15 carries. So we've seen a one-game instance of them splitting work. I like Wan'Dale Robinson for the Giants, right? It's a Malik Neighbors and then who like there. And I know it's Daniel Jones. I'll give you a name that I'm really interested in, and that's for the Chiefs. And I've been saying it since the Combine. Luis Reese-Zemet. He's the running back that used to play. He's the Welsh rugby player. Went to the IPP, so the International Player Program of the NFL, signed a 3-year deal with the Chiefs before the draft. Especially for Scott Fishbowl, because I think he's going to take over the kickoff returns because it's basically a rugby play where now he fields the ball. There's a line of guys. He just has to find one hole. He's like 23, super fast, able to absorb hits, able to make cuts. There's a play in rugby where he is running. People try me. He kicks the ball up and then runs and like basically it hits the ground. He runs and gets it himself. It's incredibly what he does. Watch his rugby highlight reels. I think they signed him specifically for this rule change. They've talked about him actually doing kickoffs to kick off the ball because he can tackle as well to save Harrison Butker. So deep sleeper for Scott Fishbowl, specifically with those kickoff bonus. Luis Reese-Zemet. Most people don't know about him, but I've been talking about him since Combine. He's a special talent. You can't teach speed and elusiveness. Those are things you just can't teach, and he has those in spades.
Okay. Well,
Great.
For me, I went with Bryce Young. I think they've really improved the offense around him. He's going at ADP 166. I'm going deep on running back, and I'm sorry that I'm taking a Dolphin for you, but Jalen Wright is big and fast. And if Mostert goes down, he starts. If Achane goes down, he plays. If neither of those guys go down, I think he returns the kicks. I really do. Yeah. At wide receiver, this one's kind of a cheat. Oh, by the way, Jalen Wright's 139. Marvin Mims is currently going at 175, but in Scott Fishbowl, he's going earlier than that because he returns both punts and kicks, and he's a wide receiver.
And they have very few people left they have very few skilled people to do those kick returns on the Denver Broncos.
That's right. And now the reason Iggy stayed off of Taysom is because I put him in as my tight end for Scott Fishbowl, because he's really up and down. He really is. But he'll get you points from quarterback. He'll play the wildcat quarterback. He returns kickoffs sometimes. I think with these new rules, he may do that a lot more in this offense. And he's a pretty good tight end, too. So I went with Taysom Hill, who's 145. So we're at the
past 4 years.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, past 4 years, he's been a tight end one. I believe Johnson, the other tight end, is a little banged up as well. So Taysom Hill could see all the snaps to begin the year. And I just want to say real quick, Evan, I understand Javonte, and like you said, Rice, he came on the second half of the year. He was all about Raudell. And then Wan'Dale Robinson is somebody I actually like deep as well. I think he's going to be the number 2 option there. Yeah. You know, Dayball went to go get him. They drafted him. So I think they still got plans for him as well. I just want to say that.
Okay, so Dustin, where can your work be found, your current work? What are you doing? Where can people follow? We already gave you your Twitter ID, but go ahead and pump yourself up, please.
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Twitter at the DUnit13. So THEDUNIT 13. I do write stuff for Fantrax and Dynasty Pro, so you can catch out all my stuff that'll come out there. But I tweet everything out. Anytime I'm on a guest spot in the podcast, I tweet it out like as crazy as possible. If you have a podcast and you want some consulting, reach out. My DMs are open. If you have trade questions, reach out. I'll tell you what, when you talk about Justin Herbert, I have one guy who just messaged me and he's trying to trade Justin Herbert. I'm like, stop trying to trade away Justin Herbert. He's too good. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about football, podcasting, websites, food, life, music, Buffalo Bills, whatever it is, reach out. I'm all about connecting with people. I love just talking to people. If you want to talk wrestling, I'm all about it. Like, yeah, that's what I'm here for. So reach out to me on Twitter. It's the best place you can find my stuff. Some Fantrax coming out there and stuff at Dynasty Pros in the season. There'll be QB list, and I just try to support other people. Tweet out your guys' podcast, any podcast I'm on, but any stuff your friends are doing. So Iggy, if you throw out a tweet for your Sevens leagues, if you're looking for people, I'll retweet that, try to get it as much reach as I can for you. So that's what I'm here for, is just to help people out.
Dustin, can we get you back on the show? Do the Bills play on Thursday night this year?
I don't know, but we can
have that. I'm trying to line up fans with when the teams play on Thursday night. So if the Bills do play on a Thursday night, I'd love to book you for that Thursday night for our in-season show. And if not, we're going to book you for another show anyway. So
they play Thursday, the second week of the season. They play Thursday night against the Dolphins.
Would you like that?
Make it happen. It's September 12th.
I'll book it in.
Book it in.
Producer.
Thank you so much for coming on. Iggy, again, thanks for stepping in for Tipp. He's lagging again, trying to make money or something.
I told Tipp, he messaged me and said, sorry, I can't make it. I said, that just means you're going to have me back so we can chop it up.
There we go.
It's already booked now.
Well, just so you know, we have 4 segments during our regular show.
Yep.
One is going to be, I've got them written down somewhere. One of them is always studs to sit, a top 12 player at their position that is not going to perform in the top 12 that week. Another one is going to be guys outside of the normal starting range that you should start. So like for quarterback and tight end, top 12, and for running back, wide receiver, he's got to be outside the top 24, but he's got to perform inside the top 24, but preferably inside the top 12. And then we do a history thing too, where we tie in history. And I think we do something with the Thursday night game. So
I'm all for it.
It's a fun show. We try to keep it fun. I really appreciate the advice you've given us, especially what you sent me through Justin's thing. That was great advice. And I mentioned that to Justin at the time is remember that, guys, you got a podcast. In the first 2 minutes, tell the people what they're going to be listening for.
Yeah, so if you have a podcast, reach out to me or Justin, and we can get you set up on this thing where we can, basically what you do is you agree to give someone feedback and you get feedback. So it's super nice. I don't do a podcast, so I'm just giving feedback right now, which is super fun. So I told Justin, just send me all of them. I'll listen to them at work. I can do a ton more since I'm not producing a show currently. If you have a podcast and you're listening and you want in on that, and you can sign up week to week. So you can say, hey, I've got a show this week. Next week I'm busy. I don't have time. And It's random who you get paired with. So you might get something from me, you might get something from Greg, you might get something from Justin, you might get something from some of the other guys in it. So it's great to get different feedback, gets eyes on your podcast, and it gets an outside view of, you're going to get a view at least, right? And hopefully a subscriber from that person who's doing it. But you also get some real, I think, hopefully positive feedback that you can implement some change and get better, and we can grow together. I think as a community, we need to start huddling around and linking arms instead of fighting each other. We all seem to be fighting for the same space, and we have a lot more power if we just join together and kind of group together and celebrate each other and prop people up instead of trying to step over them.
Amen. Amen to that.
Next week, our show will be back on its regular date and time, Thursday night. Tentatively, we're going to be discussing Discord, and I've asked Will from the Sports Affiliation to appear, but he has not answered yet. So I'll have to reach out to him again to see if he can come on Thursday night. But thank you guys both for stepping up. Love this podcast. And the people that come and support us all the time, we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. JC, thanks for doing the stuff in the background, and take us home.